Hello and good afternoon. It is Tuesday, May the 17th. You are listening and watching to PLAR History and Geography here live right now at Wasta Distance Ed in Lookout. My name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course. We are entering week number 5 of term 2B. Week number 5 of term 2B, which means there are only 4 weeks left to continue to work on your assignments and to continue to submit those assignments. If you're counting down and have your countdown going, there are 22 more school days left. 22 more school days left until graduation, which is on June 29th, and until term 2B is completed. Reminder, the deadline to submit any work is on June the 17th. Okay, so for any PLAR students, whether you're taking history, geography, English, math, or science, the last day to submit any work is June the 17th, which is the Friday. So again, continue to work on those assignments, submit them, that way we can mark them and get them back to you as soon as you can, and then you can just simply move on. But yes, 22 more school days left. That is not including weekends. That is not including the long weekend this Monday is coming up. As always, feel free to listen by radio 91.9 FM. You can call the Wasa studio 1-800-465-7144. If you want to listen, call, participate, ask question, engage, or whatnot. To get in touch with me, Jonathan, your teacher, again, give me a call during my office hours. If I am not there, leave a message. That way I can call you back and help you or answer any questions that you may have. If you don't leave a message, I will not call back because I do not know who answered. Again, feel free to send me an email if you have an email account, Facebook, social media. Again, you can interact and ask questions through that way too. Just inbox me. I check that frequently. And like always, all of the lessons are recorded. You can always go back and listen and watch as you continue to work on your assignments on the archive page or on my YouTube channel. Again, I know that Lillian is logged on. Hopefully she will call in and listen. I know your name is right there. So, or someone in Waterman is logged in. So hopefully Lillian will join us. I know Lillian is currently working on assignment number 8, which is what we will be going over today. So hopefully she will call in and we can help her out and go from there. Before we go on with today's lesson, we got a little announcement to make. Some of you may have known, some of you may have not known. But yes, this is WASA 25th year celebrating throughout this academic year since September till now. We'll celebrate until June. So this is our 25th academic year. With that being said, we're throwing a huge, and I mean huge, celebration tomorrow. So if you are in town, in the community, in Sulagao, feel free to stop by 74 Front Street. We are hosting our 25th year anniversary celebration. We are having an outdoor classroom open house. I'll say that one more time. An outdoor classroom open house, which means that we'll have a giant white screen set up in a parking lot. We'll have a monitor there, a computer there, where you can see what it's like to be in a classroom here at WASA Live through our interactive smartboard and Bridget software. You can see, you can listen, you can engage, we can help you, and you can learn through all that. Very neat, very unique experience. Also tomorrow, we will have in hot dogs, free food. Who doesn't love free food, right? So hot dogs will be here. We'll be roasting them up. We got a brand new propane tank. We will cook them on a barbecue, free to anyone from 12 to 1. Again, hot dogs, free lunch, 12 to 1. We'll also have some bannock, why not? And we'll have some free draws. Get this, we're giving away a tent. I don't know how big the tent is. but we're giving away a tent. We're also giving away a fishing rod. Pretty amazing, right? A fishing rod. And lastly, we'll be giving away an, a tablet. I'm not sure if it's an iPad or not, but we're giving away a tablet. Okay, so again, come out, fill out your name in a draw. Again, a tent, a fishing rod, and some kind of a tablet that's up for grabs. So again, a lot of good goodies are happening tomorrow here at Wausau in our parking lot. Again, you can park your car across the street absolutely for free. But yes, tomorrow from 11 to 3, outdoor classroom open house here at Wausau taking place. Feel free to stop by, have some free food, enter your name and draw, ask questions, see what it's like, and see what we do all about here at Wausau. So that is happening tomorrow in order to celebrate our 25th year anniversary. And I also believe we'll be having a cake, a massive cake as well. So again, lots of free food, a lot of goodies happening. So that is tomorrow. So enough of that. Let's get to today's lesson. So today we are wrapping up lesson number 3, which means that this is the last and final class in the history portion. That is right, the last class in the history half, which means that in 2 days from today, on Thursday, we will switch academic discipline, we'll switch subjects, and we'll look at the second portion of this course, geography. But today, yes, we're wrapping things up. We're finishing up history. We're looking at Canada since the 1980s or 1982 till present a modern time. But more specifically, we're talking about the Canada Act and free trade. So let's get to our learning goals and see what we will be talking about over the next 55 minutes or so. So our learning goals for today. Again, I'll write this down on the screen. Some of the topics that we will be discussing and going over. Well, we'll start things off by looking at the Constitution Act, also known as the Canada Act, but I like to refer it as the Constitution Act. We'll be also talking about a Prime Minister named Brian Mulroney. Unpopular Prime Minister that we have in our history, to some people or to most people. We'll be also talking about Canada and the United States relationship. So the US relationship, what was going on with our neighbors down south during this time period. And we'll wrap things up by looking at women. Once again, some women's history, but women in politics. Canadian women in politics. And how women's and their role as a gender in terms of equity and in terms of equality has changed and has progressed since the early 1900s till modern time. So that is our learning goal for today, but more specifically, by the end of today's class, you will be able to describe some key trends and or development in the Canadian economy since 1982, more specifically free trade and US relationship. You will also be able to describe Canada's relationship with the United States, the impact of Canada's and United States relationship, and how that shaped Canada's identity and heritage. And finally, we'll be looking at identifying some key developments and issues that have affected the relationship between federal, provincial, governments, and Aboriginal population, and analyze them from various perspectives. So those are our learning goals for today, and that's what we'll be talking about and discussing over the next 55 minutes. So let's start things off. Again, I am on page 21 in your textbook if you are following along. Again, just so you know, all the answers, all the requirements are in your textbook. So again, there are some additional information that are on my slide. But again, to answer all the questions in your workbook, all you need are your textbook. Again, all the answers are there. Please make sure you go back and read your textbook. So the Canada Act of 1982, also known as the Constitution Act. The Constitution Act or the Canada Act was signed on April 17th, 1982. Again, you'll see a question on assignment 8 in regards to the Constitution Act. The Constitution Act, also known as or referred to as the Constitution Act or Canada Act, it was signed and put in place on April 17th, 1982. The purpose and the goal of the Canada Act gives Canada complete control over its own constitution without Britain's permission. With that being said, now with this in play, Canada can do whatever it wants without interference from Britain. Again, we have a long history, long relationship and ties with the British Empire. Again, with this now in place, we now can completely do what we want to do within our own sovereignty, within our own nation, based on creating laws, changing laws, doing this in Canada or on the international stage. We can do whatever we want on our own without Britain's permission. Hence why the Canada Act of 1982 is pretty significant. Also embedded and entrenched in the Constitution is the Charter of Rights and Freedom. Again, we talked about that a few slides from a few weeks ago. What that includes, again, that includes equality rights, mobility rights, democratic rights, legal rights, fundamental rights, and such. Okay, and all Canadian citizens are entitled to these rights and freedoms to a certain extent. All Canadian provinces and territories sign onto the Constitution except for one. Except for one province, and that province is no other than Quebec. Again, we talked a lot about the tensions and conflict with French Canadians, especially in Quebec. But again, all Canadian provinces and territories signed on to the Constitution Act of 82, except for Quebec. Now, what we need to remember, class, is that when it was signed and what was the goal and purpose of the Constitution Act. Again, the purpose of the Constitution Act gives Canada complete control over its own sovereignty, over its own constitution. We can now do whatever we like without Britain's permission. We can finally say that Canada has grown up. Again, that didn't take place until 1982. In a way, pretty recently. Next, we'll be talking about a Canadian Prime Minister named Brian Mulroney. You can see his face and what he looks like on page 22 in your textbook. Brian Mulroney. So, Brian Mulroney was Canada's Prime Minister in 1984. He wasn't really in power or in office for a really long time. Why, you may ask? Well, some of the reasons I'm going to list off may have to do with them. So Mulroney, when he was in office, he wanted and favored lower taxes. Sounds great. Again, no one likes to pay taxes. That kind of intrigued people. Hence why he was voted into office. Again, anything that regards to lowering taxes and not paying taxes that pleases the public, pleases the people. Hence why Mulroney was voted into office and power. Also, Mulroney, there was less spending, in terms of less government spending when he was in office. And also, Mulroney wanted to improve relationship with the United States in regards to free trade. And he really wanted to please the province of Quebec. Again, as we have seen, a lot of tension between English-speaking and French-speaking Canadians in regards to the Francophone population. Again, he wanted to please Quebec. Again, like we mentioned, Quebec as a province did not sign onto the Constitution Act, whereas everyone else did. Again, he also wanted to improve the relationship with our neighbor down south, the United States, in regards to free trade. So those are the two main factors, or two and a half main factors, which made Mulroney pretty significant when he was in office. During this time period of the early 1990s, the 1990s consisted of a recession. It was unable to reduce government debt that was going on. There was cutback in social services, cutback in pension, and even cutback in welfare. Again, a lot of things were cut back in the early 1990s. Again, social service, pension, and welfare. Mulroney, when he was in office, he introduced the GST tax, the goods and service tax, the GST tax. Oh boy, that really, I think, pretty much upset a lot of Canadians, or most of Canadians. Again, we know that each province has its own provincial tax, but in Ontario, we also pay something known as the GST tax, the goods and service tax. Nowadays, that's known as the HST tax, but same thing. Again, that was introduced when Brian Mulroney was in office so that it can help reduce all the recession that was going on. However, as we know, we still have it today, otherwise known as the HST tax. Again, no one likes to pay taxes. No one wants to spend extra money from the pocket. Hence why Mulroney, with the introduction of the GST tax, was very unpopular. Eventually, he resigned in 1993 because of all these factors that was going on. Oh, you wait, there'll be more in regards to Mulroney. Free trade. Free trade. Again, this was something that was also going on and developing during the time period of Brian Mulroney when he was in office. So in regards to free trade, we're talking about the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. Yeah, we'll be looking at more in regards to NAFTA in the geography section, but NAFTA stands for the North American Free Trade Agreement, which consisted of Canada, Canada, our neighbor down south, the United States, and their neighbor down south, Mexico. Again, North America, again, the three countries that consisted on this continent are part of this agreement. Canada, United States, and Mexico. Again, it's not just with Canada and the United States, but we also got to include Mexico as well. NAFTA was officially put in place in 1994. Again, it was in the period of Brian Mulroney when he was in office. Again, free trade. The purpose of NAFTA is that these three countries, Canada, United States, and Mexico, they can now trade goods and items back and forth without paying additional taxes. Sounds great? Why not? However, some argued for it, some argued against it. Some supported it, some didn't. Why? Well, some argue and believe that businesses here in Canada would eventually be bankrupt and move to Mexico, as products can be produced at a much cheaper rate in regards to producing them in Mexico, as we can pay workers in Mexico cheaper to produce items and goods. Also, in regards to the stronger American dollars, which is still kind of happening today, I'm not too sure what their Canadian dollar is. Probably around 70 something cents, under 80 cents, I believe. But again, that's not a factor back then, not a factor today. A lot of American companies now operate in Canada, and it still does. Why? Because of the stronger American dollars. Hence why you kind of notice that a lot of Canadian companies here in Canada, again, went bankrupt. They closed their doors because they couldn't really compete what was going on in the States. For example, Zellers. That's one example I can think on top of my head. Target, well, that's kind of American, but now is bankrupt in Canada. But the example is Zellers and the Eaton, way back in the day, I believe, was bought out by an American company. Again, those are just some examples of stronger American dollars buying out Canadian companies. Again, we have a lot of American influences here in Canada. Again, you see it in terms of products, in terms of goods, in terms of stores, in terms of items. Again, this is why some people argue why trading with and selling items with the United States is a negative consequences. Again, that leads to a branch plant economy. Okay, a lot of American influences. Again, some people argue that Canada should trade within Canada, but that's another story for that. Again, free trade, NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, Canada, United States, and Mexico. Oh, Brian Mulroney once again. So we're going to switch gears and look at what Brian Mulroney did while he was in office that, again, displeased the public. Again, he wanted to please and satisfy Quebec, and this is what he did. So Brian Mulroney, again, a negative figure in a way, he introduced, or tried to introduce something known as the Meech Lake Accord of 1987, the Meech Lake Accord. With the Meech Lake Accord, what it was designed to do by Brian Mulroney was he, again, wanted to please Quebec. Again, Quebec as a province did not sign onto the Constitution. Everyone else did, except for Quebec. However, with the Meech Lake Accord, the purpose of the Meech Lake Accord was to recognize Quebec as a distinct society. Fancy word over there, distinct society. Again, the purpose of the Meech Lake Accord was that it was supposed to please Quebec. It was supposed to recognize Quebec as a distinct society so that they can sign on to the Constitution and finally be united and unified within Canada. However, that didn't happen because a man named Elijah Harper, he was an MP, a Cree MP in the province of Manitoba, and he was, again, Aboriginal, Indigenous, and he really stood up and fought for Aboriginal rights. He simply stated that if Quebec was to be treated as a distinct society, why can't we? When I mean we, what he was referring to Aboriginal people or the Aboriginal population. Why can't they be considered a distinct society as well, based on their culture, based on their practices, tradition, and whatnot? And because of Elijah Harper fighting to stand up for Aboriginal rights, like I said, the Meech Lake Accord proposed by Brian Mulroney was never passed. It was never passed. Again, it's kind of unfair if Quebec can be treated as a distinct society based on their Francophone culture. Again, why can't anyone else have that same distinction? Here are 5 things that the Meech Lake was supposed to implement. Number 1, it was supposed to recognize Quebec as a distinct society. Number 2, it was also referred to as Quebec will be able to participate in naming Supreme Court judges. Again, the Supreme Court of Canada is the highest level of judicial power branch that we have here in Canada. If all the court cases rather go through municipality than provincial, eventually goes towards the Supreme Court of Canada, and that decision is final. All the other decisions you can appeal and go to a higher court level, but any decision made by the Supreme Court of Canada is considered final. And Quebec wanted to participate in naming those Supreme Court judges. Interesting. Number 3, Quebec could veto any constitution change, which means that they can block any constitution change that Canada makes. Again, really unfair advantage that they wanted. Number 4, it limits what were placed on federal spending in Quebec. And number 5, Quebec will have an increased power in the area of immigration. Again, these are all what was outlined and stated in the Meech Lake Accord proposed by Brian Mulroney in order to please the province of Quebec. Again, a lot of unfairness in regards to how much power or influences the province of Quebec have within Canada. Again, a lot of unfairness. Hence why it was never passed, because they really didn't take into account the whole purpose and unity of Canada. However, even though the Meech Lake Accord failed, it didn't stop Brian Mulroney there. Again, he wanted to continue to get Quebec to sign a constitution. He wanted to continue to please the province of Quebec. So what he did was that in 1992, he proposed another act, and that was known as the Charlottetown Accord. The Charlottetown Accord in 1992. Again, it recognized kind of 4 main categories in regards to Quebec. Really similar to the Meech Lake Accord, but slightly different. Number 1, again, it still recognized Quebec as a distinct society. Again, really unfair. Number 2, Quebec can opt out any federal compensation and run their own programs. Again, unfair too. If all provinces and territories have to, why can't Quebec join as well? Number 3, control development and labor training. And number 4, the right to choose 3 Supreme Court judges. Again, very similar to the Meech Lake proposal, but the Charlottetown Accord was really similar. Again, it was all proposed by Brian Mulroney in order to get and please Quebec in order to sign the Constitution. And with the Charlottetown Accord proposal, it was up to the people. We, the people. Canadians voted on this referendum, our proposed call, whether or not it will be passed. And as a result, 54% of Canadians said no, whereas only 46 people said yes. And as a result, boom, done. The Charlottetown Accord was never passed, and it once again failed. And as a result of that, today, Quebec, as a province, is still not a part of the Constitution. Even though it still applies to them, they didn't sign on to it. Okay? They're still a part of it, they just didn't sign on to the Constitution. Again, very unique. Again, you can see the trend and the continuation of the conflict between French-speaking Canadians wanting to maintain their identity, and how that still consists and still has a factor today. So that's Brian Mulroney. Again, take note of what he was trying to do, what he did in office, whether you agree or disagree with them. Again, you may agree with them, you may not agree with them. That's your opinion. Okay, but yeah, Brian Mulroney, very, very interesting. Next. We are going to talk about Canadian women in politics. We're going to wrap up this course and this section in regards to looking at women and in politics. Again, since day 1 of this course, when we looked at lesson number 1, women's rights and women's equality in the early 1900s. Again, we talked about women being in the home, women regards to the angel in the house, working in the home as the private sphere, domestic service, cooking, cleaning, maiden, all those other factors. Again, women couldn't write, women couldn't vote, women couldn't own land. A lot of discrimination and all that inequality in regards to Canadian women. But as we've seen throughout lesson 1 and lesson 2 and even lesson number 3, how women's rights change. Women can now vote and such. But in terms of politics, we now see Canadian women in politics holding key political positions that can go to not just in politics, but everyday factors. We now see women, again, we still see them as teachers, but we now see them as police officers, even women as firefighters, who knows, right? All those challenges and barriers are slowly coming down through feminism and through equality. Women stand up for their rights and for the gender, speaking based on their own voice. Again, very, very powerful, very, very key. But we're going to talk about two key political positions, and that is the Governor General and the Prime Minister. We're going to talk about 4 individuals. We're going to talk about Jean Save, Adrienne Clarkson, Michelle Jean, and Kim Campbell. And why these 4 Canadian women in politics are significant. But first, let's go over the roles of the Governor General and the Prime Minister. Because we hear all the time the Governor General and the Prime Minister, but we may not know exactly what their roles are. The Governor General, believe it or not, I believe a couple of weeks ago, or I think a month ago, the current Governor General of Canada was in Sulikout. I think his name was David Johnston. Correct me if I'm wrong, but David Johnston is our current Canadian Governor General. Again, not completely sure on that. But the role of the Canadian Governor General can be regarded to as pretty significant. Again, some people can even argue that the Governor General is more important based on their roles than the Prime Minister. I'll leave that up to you to judge. But the role of the Governor General is to act as the Queen representative in Canada as the head of state. So anything in regards to our Queen Elizabeth II, it goes through the Governor General. The Governor General even gives the royal assent to pass bills in the House of Commons. They even sign on state documents, which means that they can even sign off and pass laws based on through the House of Commons. They read a throne of speech during important ceremonies and celebration. They even appoint court judges. Governor generals are often selected by prime ministers, and governor general are always and often usually in office for only 5 years. And after that, we appoint a new governor general. So those are some of the key factors and roles of the governor general. Let's look at the roles of the prime minister. The role of the prime minister, Justin Trudeau. He is the head of government in Canada. He provides leadership and direction for government. He also selects members of cabinets, appoints executive members, judges, and other people in office. But his main role is to be able to explain policies and programs created. For example, I believe that Justin Trudeau wants to pass or legalize marijuana. So his job as a leader and as prime minister is to be able to explain that policy and why he's creating or implementing that program. So that is his role as prime minister. So again, you can see the differences between a governor general and a prime minister, and you can judge yourself which one is more important. But let's look at some of these key women. Again, before all this time, before even the early 1980s, we never had women in the position of parliament or in office. Pretty significant. So Jean Save was Canada's 23rd Governor General in 1984. She was the first woman to be Canada's Governor General or appointed as Speaker in the House of Commons. First ever, never happened before. Jean Save also focused on youth and world peace while she was the Governor General. Prior to all of that, she worked as CBC as a journalist for over 20 years. But Jean Save, again, first ever women appointed in the House of Commons, first ever women in the House of Commons, and she really focused on youth and world peace. Jean Save. That is why she was significant, and that is why her name's in a textbook and whatnot. Next key women we're going to talk about is Adrienne Clarkson. Adrienne Clarkson. So Miss Clarkson is also a female Canadian Governor General. She was Canada's Governor General in 1999. 1999. She was born in Hong Kong, but came to Canada as a refugee. Again, just like Jean Save, she also worked at CBC as a writer and as a host before she became Canada's Governor General. She really focused on military, the North, and visiting Aboriginal communities. Good for her. What made Adrienne Clarkson significant was that she was the first ever visible minority to be a Governor General. Again, very, very significant. Again, breaking down all those barriers and challenges throughout time. Again, first person of a visible minority to be Governor General of Canada. Again, another key step in our history right there. Adrienne Clarkson, first visible minority to be Governor General of Canada. Next person we're going to talk about is Michelle Jean. Very recent, prior to our current Governor General we have right now. Again, Michelle Jean was also at one point Canada's Canadian Governor General in 2005. She was born in Haiti. She emphasized on issues based on youth, Aboriginal Canadians, military, arts, and even fighting violence against women. So that's why she was significant in our textbook. Again, also another female Canadian Governor General of Canada, Michelle Jean, in 2005. And lastly, we're going to talk about Kim Campbell. Not Campbell Soup, but Kim Campbell. Kim Campbell was Canada's first ever, and I mean ever, first ever woman to be Canada's Prime Minister. First ever woman to be Canada's Prime Minister. First ever. And that was in 1993. She took over when Brian Mulroney stepped down from office. She took over. However, you may not even recognize her name, Kim Campbell. When Campbell was in office, she really emphasized on improving the criminal code, firearms, and sexual assault laws, and other factors as well. However, Kim Campbell really focused on debt rather than jobs. Again, in the 90s, we had a recession. Not many jobs were really open to Canadians. And she really refused to discuss social programs. Again, not talking about or creating social programs, not creating jobs. Boom, Kim Campbell, you were unpopular. Hence why she didn't really last long in office. Uh, she was in office, I believe, for less than a year. Again, she took over when Brian Mulroney stepped down, and because she didn't really focus on jobs and refused to discuss social programs, the next election happened, I think in '94, and boom, she wasn't voted into power anymore. And I believe at that point, John Christian of the Liberal Party was in office, became Canada's Prime Minister. So yeah, Kim Campbell, first ever woman to be Prime Minister, believe it or not. Again, a name you may have never ever heard of, but again, very significant in regards to first women being Canada's Prime Minister. Again, you never know. We may have another female Prime Minister later down the road. If you have been watching CNN down in the States with the U.S. presidential election coming up soon with Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and all those other popular names. Again, Hillary Clinton could be the first woman, I believe, to be president of the United States. Again, if that does happen, again, very significant in regards to women, gender, breaking down barriers, not being in regards to certain jobs, but being even hold key jobs in politics and whatnot. So again, that's the main goal. That women nowadays are holding key positions and jobs and duties. So these four names that we talked about, Jean Sav, Adrienne Clarkson, Michelle Jean, and even Kim Campbell, very, very significant. We'll get to assignment 8 questions in just a moment here, but as promised and as always, we're going to integrate and plug in some Indigenous content, Indigenous history, what was going on based on First Nations, Aboriginal during this time period of 1980s to the present until modern time. So in 1990, a crisis broke out. It was known as the Orca Crisis. Again, some of us may remember it. Some of us may have seen it on TV, news, the media in 1990 and what that was all about. The Orca Crisis happened in Quebec in 1990. It was a 78-day standoff between the Mohawk protesters versus the police and some of the Canadian Armed Forces. The problem here was that people wanted to expand the golf course or expand that development onto land which was known as Aboriginal land. There was land disputes as this expansion was going to be on Mohawk burial grounds. So that problem led to recognition based on right of land in regards to Aboriginal people. Barricades were set up, blockage to access to everywhere. There was even support from other Aboriginal population in regards to this, but the main problem here was, can Aboriginal people maintain or have the right to claim their own land? Okay, and because of the Orca crisis, the impact of it was that it brought out Aboriginal rights and Aboriginal right to land claims and awareness. So that was a significant crisis that happened in Quebec, Orca crisis in 1990. Again, it raised awareness based on Aboriginal rights and land claims. Land claims. Very, very significant. That was just not one case, but we have other significant cases in regards to, can Aboriginal people claim or have the right to their land. Also during this time period, it was the period of Aboriginal voice. There was an increase on public awareness on residential school situation what was going on. Again, the last residential school closed here in Canada in '96. It took the Canadian federal government another 20 years before the federal government even apologized. Our former Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, on June 11th, 2008, apologized, and I quote, "I stand before you to offer my apologies to former students of Indian residential schools," end quote. Again, this residential school have been going out since day one, over 100 plus years. We have seen the effects it has on our communities today. Again, we need to spread the word, spread the awareness so that everyone is aware of these situations so that we can do something, educate, and prevent and help from this ever happening again, or help those who are in need. Again, we have seen how Aboriginal awareness, identity, in regards to the Canadian government, has changed since the early 1900s. Continuing looking at Indigenous identity today, back in 1867 on Confederation, Europeans, when they first came over, they thought that Canadians, they were confident that Aboriginal people would become absorbed into mainstream Eurocentric Canadian society. Again, it took over after 148 years. That has not happened. Aboriginal people and communities, whether they're from Anishinaabe or Ojibwe or other identity, again, not just one, but there's tons. But the key to survival is adaptability. Adaptability. First Nation nowadays in the 20th century or 21st century have learned to be a part of Canadian society without compromising their identity. They always know where they come from. They always know their background, their heritage, their culture, where they're from. And as a result, they always knew where they were. With a new voice nowadays, we now can change and tell the rest of Canada based on their experience. Again, whether you're Indigenous, First Nation, Aboriginal or not, the key here is not necessarily becoming or learning the content or becoming critical thinkers, but my main goal is for everyone to become flexible thinkers. Flexible thinking. Knowing your own identity, knowing where you stand in the place of the world, knowing that what you learn today may not necessarily apply for tomorrow, but again, not necessarily become a critical thinker, but a flexible thinker. Flexible thinker. All right, question number 8. Let's wrap things up. 16 marks. Question number 1. When was the Canada Act signed? So I'm looking for a year. What year was the Canada Act signed? And what did this act do for Canada? In other words, the goal or the purpose of the act. Question number 2. Do you think North America, Canada, United States, and Mexico will ever include other countries in the free trade agreement? Why or why not? I think this is one of the most important questions in the whole workbook, because it asks what you think, not what I think, but what you think. Okay, you can't find this answer in your textbook because it's like an opinion-based question. So you need to tell me yes or no on whether or not Canada, United States, and Mexico will include other countries in this free trade agreement. Yes or no? Again, this is one question that I always look forward to when marking, because as a student, it really shows me what you're thinking from different perspectives based on your own experience and whatnot. So I'm really interested to see what everyone else say. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. Along and just state yes or no and tell me why, yes or no. Okay? You'll always get full marks as long as you're on topic, but if you start talking about something else, then you won't get full marks. Lastly, you got a little chart. You gotta complete the chart. Basically, you have to tell me what you think. Again, what you think. Give your thoughts about the person. Again, I'm really interested to see what you think about the person. Whether you agree or disagree, like or dislike, love or hate. Again, it doesn't really matter. Tell me, give me your thoughts and support your thoughts. Okay, with details in the course provided. So you are talking about Mackenzie King, why he was significant, what he done during the Second World War, what he implemented, why he was significant. Do you like him? Do you dislike him? You think he was important? Was he helpful? Yes or no? Same thing for Trudeau, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, in the 60s with the FLQ and the Quiet Revolution. Was he right? Was he wrong? Do you like him? Do you dislike him? Give me your thoughts. Okay, and then use details from the course to support it. Okay, can't just tell me, oh, I hate him, but tell me why you hate him. What did he do that you dislike him? Again, Brian Mulroney talked about him today, how he wanted to pass the Meat Accord and the Sherritt Accord, really ignored average of people's rights. Do you like him? Do you dislike him? Agree, disagree? Again, give me your thoughts. What do you think? But support why? Again, Governor Generals of Canada, Jean Save. Again, first ever woman to become Canada's Governor General. I think that's pretty significant. Okay. Again, tell me. Think it's significant? Was it right? Was it wrong? Or whatnot? And same thing for Andrea Clarkson. Why was she important? What did she do in order to help shape our heritage, our identity as a country, as Canada? Okay. So again, with all these individuals, 2 marks each. Tell me whether you agree, disagree, like, but then again, make sure you support it with facts from the textbook. Again, a lot of students lose marks because they don't tell me their thoughts. They just tell me, oh, they did this. He created this. But then again, you need to tell me your thoughts in order to get full marks. Okay? Again, if you're unsure, let me know, ask questions. I'm more than happy to rephrase it and help you. That's what I'm here to do. And that right there, class, is the conclusion of PLAR history. That is it. Again, 8 assignments since Canada in the early 1900s till present day. Again, you must be able to complete or attempt all questions on all assignments. Submit them to me. Once I give you the green light, then you can be eligible to write the test. Again, a test is a pass or fail situation. All you need is 50% or better in order to complete it. If you're unsuccessful the first time, it is not the end of the world. You do have a second chance or opportunity to write it again. Okay? So again, by doing all assignments, it demonstrates to me that you're ready and whatnot. Again, what really matters here is the test. Not necessarily the mark on your assignments, but the test, the exam. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So that being said, we will start lesson number 4 on Thursday, looking at geography. Oh boy, geography. So all those geography students looking to do this section, feel free to join class on Thursday, where we start lesson number 4, looking at human geography. History is now done. It's in the books. No more history until September. Again, we're starting geography on Thursday. Just to remind everyone before we go of tomorrow's events. Oh boy, 25th anniversary celebration. Again, an outdoor classroom open house happening here at Wasta in Sioux Lookout, 74th Front Street next to the post office from 11 to 3. Come experience an outdoor classroom learning experience with the Smart Board and Smart Bridget program. Learn what WASA is all about. Say hi to us. All the DEC from our communities up north are in town. Come say hi to them, meet them. Free hot dogs from lunch, 12 to 1. Again, we will be cooking hot dogs on our barbecue. We got a brand new propane tank. So we got lots of food going on. Bannock draws. Again, lots of draws happen. Again, we're giving away a tent, a fishing rod, and a tablet. Lots of goodies being handed out. Don't want to miss that. Again, that all happening tomorrow, live, in a parking lot from 11 to 3 at Wassa. You can park your car across the street absolutely for free. Come say hi to myself. It should be a lot of fun day. We'll have lots of great weather, lots of food, and hopefully a lot of people will come out to that. With that being said, this is it. My name is Jonathan. I'm a teacher. This has been PLAR History and Geography. I'll see everyone tomorrow in a parking lot, and I'll see everyone once again here on Thursday. Thank you.